Hey guys, tonight we walk with you into the Swabian Jura, southern Germany, year 39,000 BCE. You duck inside the limestone mouth of a cave called Hohenstein-Stadel, your breath frosting in the winter air as flickers of firelight push shadows against damp stone. The floor crunches with broken bones of deer and mammoth, scattered where hunters butchered their kills. The smell is part animal hide, part smoldering pine resin, and part the tang of limestone dripping in slow, icy rhythm. Around you, small groups of your people huddle in furs, whispering in hushed voices, eyes darting toward the darker chambers where something more than ordinary shelter waits. You probably won't survive this place, not with cave lions prowling outside and spirits watching from the walls, but let's pretend you do, because tonight isn't about comfort, it's about staring into the oldest evidence of imagination itself, a strange carved figure buried deep in this cave, a figurine that blends man and beast. So before we start carving up mammoth ivory, let me give you that YouTube-friendly pause. If you're into Ice Age mysteries, like the Lion Man and the Sky Beasts, make sure to hit subscribe and keep this fire going. Drop a quick comment with your location and local time, because I want to know when in the modern world you're listening to the story of the oldest sculpture of its kind. And hey, if a 39,000-year-old shaman can mix man with lion, I think you can handle sticking around until we dig into how it all actually happened. Tonight, the story belongs to you and the creature that still crouches in fragments, waiting to speak. The Jura caves loom around you now, echoing with the sounds of dripping water and murmurs of fire-lit hunters. The people here are warrior nations, our ancestors, Homo sapiens, newly spread across Ice Age Europe. They've chosen these caves not just for shelter, but for something deeper, the chance to connect with the unseen. Each limestone passage promises protection from the cold, but also tempts with darkness where spirits dwell. These caves aren't empty, they hum with thousands of years of footsteps, hearth ash, and carvings. Furs hang from shoulders as hunters step inside, dragging mammoth bones that could feed a band for weeks. Children scamper near the entrance, careful not to wander too deep where bears sometimes sleep through the winter. The walls are damp, pale, and streaked with mineral patterns like ghostly veins. Already you see traces of ochre smudged on rock, proof that this is not just a camp, but a canvas for belief. And in one corner, someone has already laid aside a mammoth tusk, hacked from a carcass. It's heavy, pale, and full of possibility. To us it's just ivory, but to them it's the body of the beast, transformed. They'll shape it into something no predator, no human, has ever seen before, and if you stay long enough, you'll watch the beginning of that transformation, the day the Lion Man takes form. You feel the pulse of anticipation, the sense that in this cave the ordinary and the supernatural meet. For these people, there is no clear line between the two. Every hunt, every storm, every howl in the night, is a message from powers that must be respected, or feared, and what better way to respect them, than to carve their likeness, to hold their essence in your hands. The journey begins here, at the threshold of darkness, where men and women of 39,000 years ago step cautiously inside, and leave behind the first tangible signs of imagination. The air inside the cave thickens as the fire dies low, and your eyes begin to notice the raw materials scattered across the floor. These aren't the shiny iron tools or steel chisels you'd expect. No, in 39,000 BCE the workshop of early humans is stocked with tusks, bones, stones and fibers. Everything is scavenged from the hunts and from the Ice Age landscape outside. To you, a splinter of ivory might look like a random shard, but in these hands it's the beginning of a story. Ivory is the crown jewel here. A full-grown woolly mammoth carries tusks that could stretch more than 3 meters long, curving like pale crescents of moonlight. Hunters risk their lives to bring one down, and when they succeed, the tusks are prizes that outlast even the feast. Ivory doesn't rot, it doesn't crumble like wood or shatter like brittle bone. It's smooth, dense, and capable of holding detail if someone has the patience to coax shapes from it. You can almost hear the quiet scrape as stone blade meets mammoth tusk, shaving off curls of pale material that fall like snowy chips onto the ground. Stone, of course, is the eternal backbone of Ice Age technology. Flint nodules, chipped with skill into razor-sharp flakes, make excellent cutting edges. You run your finger over one and realize just how sharp these can be. It's like handling a box cutter. Without steel they shape ivory, wood and hide into useful things. Spearheads, scrapers, birins. A birin, in fact, is the exact tool best suited to carving lines into ivory. Imagine holding a sliver of stone like a tiny chisel, driving it slowly across the tusk to score, groove and slice until a pattern emerges. Bones from reindeer, horse, and even predators become tools as well. Their shafts are carved into needles or awls for piercing hides. The flat sections can be sharpened, polished, or even used as smooth burnishes. A femur from a lion or cave bear isn't just a leftover snack, it's a raw material. And if you're wondering whether they ever worried about bad luck shaping a predator's bones into tools, let's just say superstition never stopped innovation when survival demanded it. The people also use fibers and resin, animal sinew pulled and twisted, bind spear points to shafts. Pine resin, sticky and smoky, glues flakes of flint into place. Even birch bark tar, yes, Ice Age humans figured out how to cook bark into tar, becomes an adhesive. It smells sharp and smoky, like a prehistoric superglue. What strikes you most is how nothing goes to waste. Every mammoth hide is stretched into tents or cut into cloaks. Every shard of tusk is either carved into a bead, a pendant, or left for children to play with. To them, raw material is not inert, it carries meaning. Ivory, especially, is loaded with significance. It's the literal body of the mammoth, a beast that commands both awe and terror. To carve into it is to reshape the strength of a creature that once charged across the steppe. And it's not just practical. Already you notice that some fragments have been deliberately shaped into things that serve no survival function at all. Little beads with holes for stringing, tiny female figurines with exaggerated forms, flutes made from bird bones. Imagine trying to tell your survival-focused brain that time spent carving a flute instead of another spearhead is worthwhile. You'd scoff. But for them, music and symbol are survival in a different way. They bind the group, they shape belief, they remind people of who they are. So when you see someone lay a heavy piece of ivory on the floor, you're not just looking at raw material, you're witnessing the beginning of a ritual act. This isn't about making another spear to kill dinner. This is about carving into the substance of an animal that fed them, clothing them, and stood as one of the rulers of the Ice Age. They're about to bend it into something new, a body that's not human, not lion, but both. And that's where the strangeness begins. The tools are ready, the flakes, burins, sinew and firelight. The material is ready, the ivory tusk, cut and scraped to manageable size. What's left is the leap of imagination that no other creature on Earth has taken to turn a chunk of mammoth into a symbol of something unseen, a bridge between the world of predators and the world of humans. The stage is set, the lion man waits, still trapped inside the tusk. The mammoth tusk rests heavy in the lap of the carver, a curved weight that resists every attempt to shape it. Unlike wood, ivory is stubborn, it refuses to split neatly, and each cut risks splintering months of work into a useless crack. You sit nearby, the firelight dancing off the raw surface, and watch as flint burins and scrapers go to work. The rhythm is patient, deliberate, chip, scrape, smooth, over and over again. If you came here looking for fast action, you're in the wrong Ice Age workshop. This is a marathon of precision. The first challenge is simply cutting a section of tusk to workable size. Imagine sawing through something dense as hardwood, only with stone blades. They don't slice cleanly, they grind and score, chewing through the material with patience. It might take hours, even days, just to reduce a tusk to a manageable block. Each stroke squeals faintly against the ivory, a sound sharp enough to echo off the cave walls. Then comes the rough shaping. The block is hacked into a basic silhouette, broad strokes defining where head, shoulders, arms and legs will eventually appear. There's no sketchbook, no eraser, no undo button. You commit every line with faith that the form inside will emerge. You can almost hear the carver mutter under his breath, "Please don't crack, please don't crack," in Ice Age German. Okay, maybe not German, but you get the idea. The burin does most of the work. This tiny stone tool, sharp and narrow, can dig grooves into ivory like a prehistoric X-Acto knife. Line by line, the carver etches muscle contours, joints, and the faint outline of a lion's muzzle. Smoothing follows, using sandstone and reindeer hide strips to polish rough edges. The heat of the fire helps too. Warming the ivory softens it slightly, though not too much, or it risks warping. It's a delicate balance, and you wouldn't want to be the apprentice who scorches the material. Hours blur into days. The figurine doesn't reveal itself all at once. You notice how each section of the body gets separate. Careful attention, the sturdy torso, upright like a man's, the long powerful arms, the legs planted firm as though the figure itself could stalk across the cave floor. And then the face, that's where everything changes. Instead of shaping the blunt, familiar features of a human, the carver extends the muzzle, adds the pointed ears and cuts slanted lines for eyes. Suddenly the figure has crossed the boundary into something uncanny, neither fully man nor fully beast. Every chip of ivory falling to the cave floor marks a decision. Is the head tilted in dominance, or in quiet watchfulness? Do the arms hang down like a man's, or flex like a predator's? The artist is making choices that define not just the sculpture but the meaning it will carry for the group. You realize this is not just about skill, it's about belief. They aren't carving a toy, they're coaxing a spirit into being. And that spirit has to endure the Ice Age itself. Crude flint may look primitive to you, but under these hands it works miracles. Each incision is shallow, controlled, a whisper of a line that eventually builds into fur texture, or the powerful jawline of a lion. Tiny chips fly into the firelight, glowing for a moment before vanishing into ash. You wonder if some child might collect these ivory fragments later, string them into beads, and wear them as a kind of leftover blessing. By the time the figurine takes recognizable shape, it has consumed hundreds of hours. You rub your eyes, wondering how someone could commit so much energy in a world where starvation is always one missed hunt away. Yet here it is, a 31-centimeter figure, upright, broad-shouldered, crowned with a lion's head that gazes somewhere beyond the cave walls. And suddenly you feel it too, that this isn't just art, it's a bridge, a connection between hunter and hunted, human and animal, body and spirit. The carving process itself has been an act of transformation, just as much for the maker as for the ivory. You reach out almost against your better judgment to imagine how the surface would feel, cool, smooth in some places, rough where the burren carved furrows. You picture how firelight would cast its long shadow on the cave wall, the figure appearing larger, more alive, as though the lion man itself has stepped from tusk into being. And you realize, the world has changed. Humans are no longer just shaping tools for survival, they're shaping symbols for meaning, and from now on the lion man will prowl not just in the plains outside but in the imaginations of every person who gathers in this cave. The carving sits complete now, 31 centimeters of ivory, transformed into something the Ice Age had never seen before, a human body crowned with the face of a lion. Its upright stance feels deliberate, almost confrontational. Firelight exaggerates the carved muscles and muzzle, until its shadow stretches across the cave wall like a living presence. The Ori nations, the people gathered here, regard it with silence. You might laugh and say it's prehistoric fan art, but for them this figure is weighty, alive with meaning. The hybrid isn't random. Lions, after all, were the kings of Ice Age Europe, but not the African lions you picture on a nature documentary. These were cave lions, Panthera leo spalea, massive beasts with no manes, standing larger than any modern big cat. They prowled the grasslands and river valleys, ambushing prey with a strength humans could only envy. Meeting one outside your cave wasn't oh cool wildlife, it was well guess I'm dinner. In fact, cave lions may have weighed up to 700. For context, that's like being jumped by a hungry sofa with claws. So why fuse a man with a lion? To early humans, it wasn't just aesthetic, it was a leap across the boundary between human weakness and animal power. Carving a lion's head onto a man's body was a way of embodying strength, speed, and dominance. Think of it as the Ice Age version of a superhero costume. You're fragile with bare hands, but spiritually, you could wear the predator's power. The Lion Man then becomes more than sculpture, it's a vessel, a reminder that humans could claim kinship with forces beyond themselves. In carving this hybrid, the community announces, we are not just prey, we are more. And let's be honest, you'd want a bit of that reassurance when lions, bears and wolves all outsize you. But here's where it gets interesting. The figurine doesn't look like a friendly mascot. The carved features are solemn, even forbidding. The head lowers slightly, jaws closed, eyes narrowed. It doesn't grin, it warns. That stance suggests reverence, maybe even fear. This isn't a plush toy, it's a mediator, a go-between that carries a cost. If you imagine the group holding rituals around it, you can see them approaching with offerings, fat smeared on its surface, red ochre dusting its body, feathers or beads hung from its arms, every mark reinforcing the idea that this being isn't human, isn't lion, but something in between. And it's not alone in the symbolic universe. Around Europe, people are making other carvings, tiny figurines of women with exaggerated hips and breasts, known today as Venus figurines. They exaggerate fertility, life, the cycles of survival. But the Lion Man points to something else, the power of predators, the mingling of species, the sense that the world is filled with beings not bound by ordinary shapes. You might even think of it as a myth in material form. For the carver, the act of shaping ivory into this figure may have been prayer in itself. Every incision whispered lion's strength, man's will. Every polished curve stitched the human body to a predator's face, as though the barrier between them never existed. And once it stood finished, the figurine was more than personal, it belonged to the group. You can almost hear the murmur of voices in the cave, debating what this figure means. Perhaps one elder insists it's the spirit of a lion that grants hunters success. Another says it guards against storms. Another claims it's a sky beast, a figure that prowls both land and heavens. And that ambiguity is the point. The Lion Man doesn't tell you exactly what to believe. It offers a shape that each person can read differently, like a prehistoric Rorschach test. You bring your fears and hopes to it, and it reflects them back with a lion's face. So now the statue isn't just a block of ivory carved by clever hands, it's a centerpiece for imagination, a place where survival, belief, and identity all collide. And though it was carved 39,000 years ago, it still whispers that same uneasy message to you as you stare at it in the firelight. Humans are not alone, the beasts are everywhere, and sometimes they walk inside us. The Lion Man stares back at you from the firelight, its muzzle frozen in solemn watchfulness, and you start to wonder what was going on in the minds of those who carved and revered it. Why blend the two forms at all? Why not carve a plain lion, or a plain human? The answer, at least as archaeologists and anthropologists see it, lies in symbolism, the kind of thinking that takes the ordinary and loads it with layered meaning. In Ice Age Europe, human-animal hybrids weren't just fantasy sketches, they were serious attempts to explain the world. The line between humans and animals was far thinner than we imagine today. Lions, wolves, mammoths, these weren't just other species, they were fellow beings in a shared landscape, competing, hunting, dying alongside humans. To carve a lion-headed man was to admit the power of predators and at the same time to claim some of it for yourself. It was a form of spiritual borrowing, like sneaking backstage to wear the costume of the main actor. The Aurignacians may have believed in spirit animals, guardian beings that shadowed hunters through life. To dream of a lion might mean you carried its strength in your bones. To carve it onto a human body was to make that dream physical. The figurine could have been a literal talisman of transformation. Picture a shaman holding it during a ritual, pressing the lion's head to his chest, murmuring words to slip between shapes. Man, lion, something in between. You probably won't sprout claws from doing that yourself, but for them, the possibility was real. Shape-shifting is another idea that emerges here. Even in much later mythologies, Greek, Norse, Native American, you find stories of men who become animals, animals who become men, gods who walk the line between both. The Lion Man is an ancestor to those myths, proof that the human brain, even 39,000 years ago, was already reaching for that same storytelling device. The message is both terrifying and reassuring. You can become the predator, or the predator can become you. The hybrid also suggests the world wasn't divided into real and imaginary, the way we think now. To Ice Age people, what you dreamed at night, what you saw in visions, what you feared in the dark, they all carried weight. A lion-headed man might be as real in meaning as the lions that prowled outside the cave. You could laugh and say it's just imagination, but imagination is exactly what was changing the human species at this point. It was opening doors into art, ritual, myth, all the things that separate Homo sapiens from every other creature. And it wasn't all about terror. Hybrids could embody protection. A lion's ferocity wasn't only threat, it was shield, guardian, emblem of courage. Think of modern sports teams named after predators. It's the same instinct. You wrap yourself in the power of the beast, so it stands with you instead of against you. A clan carrying the Lion Man into ritual space might have felt stronger, braver, more united, as though the predator had been tamed just enough to guard them instead of stalk them. But you can't ignore the edge of danger in it. The figurine's head is not softened into friendliness. The muzzle is strong, the ears alert, the eyes narrowed. This is a predator staring back, reminding you that you're borrowing its strength at a price. Maybe the symbolism carried warnings too. Respect the lion, honor it, or it will turn on you. Belief always cuts both ways. So when you look at the Lion Man, you're not just looking at a pretty sculpture, you're looking at the earliest material evidence of the human capacity to create beings that never existed in flesh and blood. You're staring at the first myth on Earth given solid form, and though 39,000 years separate you, the strange thing is how familiar it feels. We still imagine hybrids today, werewolves, superheroes, beastmen in comics and films. The Lion Man is their ancestor, crouching in a cave, waiting to remind us that the boundary between human and animal is one we invented, not one the world insists on. The Lion Man's face reminds you of what it must have meant to actually meet one of those Ice Age lions in the wild. Forget the roar you picture from documentaries. Cave lions were silent stalkers. Panther leo spelea, the European cave lion, was one of the largest cats to ever live. Males could stretch nearly 4 meters long from nose to tail tip. They lacked the shaggy manes of modern lions, which probably made them sleeker, faster and less obvious in the tall Ice Age grasses. You step outside the cave in your imagination and see the danger immediately. The open plains shimmer with frost. Herds of reindeer, horses and bison trudge across the steppe, their breath pluming like smoke, and somewhere in that herd, lions prowl. They wait for the weakest, then strike with a leap that no spear could ever quite match. Hunters may have killed mammoths and horses, but lions could and did kill hunters. For the Aurignacians, the lion was not just a symbol, it was a rival for meat, territory and survival. Encountering one wasn't heroic, it was sheer terror. Imagine crouching with your spear, heart thudding, and catching the yellow glow of eyes watching from the edge of the torchlight. One wrong move, and you're a snack wrapped in fur. You probably won't survive this. Your best chance is to travel in groups, keep the fire burning, and pray the lions find easier prey. But there's also admiration baked into that fear. The lion embodied speed, grace and power beyond human race. It didn't need clothes or fire or tools. It had claws, teeth and muscles designed by nature to dominate. Watching it hunt must have been both horrifying and awe-inspiring. The way modern people watch tornadoes or volcanoes, you know you can't stop it, so you respect it, maybe even worship it. That duality, fear and reverence, helped shape the symbolism of the Lion Man. When hunters carved a lion's head onto a human's body, they weren't just daydreaming, they were expressing a relationship with their deadliest rival. They knew lions as killers, but also as models of strength. By combining the two forms, they may have been saying, let us take this power into ourselves, let us be more than prey. Evidence suggests lions were depicted in other Ice Age art too. At Chauvet Cave in France, painted around 32,000 BCE, panels of lions show them hunting in groups, their heads turned in unison, eyes locked on prey. These paintings don't flatter humans, they glorify the predator. That tells you something about how deeply lions impressed themselves onto human imagination. And of course, lions weren't the only threat. Bears occupied caves, sometimes the very ones humans wanted to shelter in. Wolves prowled the plains, not yet domesticated into loyal companions. But lions, those were different. They were big, bold and terrifyingly close to human scale. A lion could kill you, yes, but it could also make you believe in power beyond your own. The Lion Man statue captures that tension perfectly. Look at its upright posture, human, fragile. Look at its head, lion, unstoppable. It says what every Aurignacian felt walking into the night. You are small, but you can imagine bigger. You can become bigger, if only in spirit. And sometimes that belief might be enough to get you through another winter. So the next time you see the figurine in a museum, don't just admire the craftsmanship, picture the reality. Men and women facing a world where lions were not behind glass enclosures, but waiting outside the campfire glow. The statue is a reminder of that sharp edge of existence, where reverence and terror blended into one carved figure that still gazes back at us across 39,000 years. Step back from the firelit Lion Man for a moment, and look up. The Ice Age sky is not the same one you scroll past on your phone weather app. It's vast, dark, and untouched by city glow. The stars blaze sharp and cold, scattered across the heavens like flint sparks frozen in place. For Aurignacians, that overhead dome was alive, filled not just with light but with beings. Some of them were real predators, eagles, hawks, vultures, circling during the day, their wings cutting against the wind. Others existed only in story, imagined beasts of the sky, part bird, part spirit, sweeping down to carry away both prey and meaning. Just as lions ruled the ground, raptors ruled the air. Picture standing at the cave mouth and watching a golden eagle spiral higher and higher, its wingspan wider than you are tall. To people who hunted with spears and lived in furs, an eagle wasn't just a bird, it was a messenger between earth and sky. Its piercing cry could mark the start of a hunt, or its sudden descent might mean the spirits had spoken. Some bones and feathers from these birds have been found in Ice Age sites, carefully kept, sometimes fashioned into ornaments. They weren't food scraps, they were symbols. And then come the sky beasts of imagination. If a lion could merge with a man, why not an eagle, a hawk, or something even stranger? Around a fire, stories might grow. A creature with the body of a man and the wings of a bird, or a predator with talons that could pluck enemies straight from the earth. The Lion Man wasn't alone in symbolic fusion. He was part of a broader way of thinking, worlds where human, animal, and spirit overlapped freely. Archaeologists suspect that early humans already told myths of flying beings. At Vogelherd Cave, not far from where the Lion Man was carved, figurines of mammoths and horses have been found, but also carved birds. Some are so tiny they could fit in a child's palm. Were they toys, charms, portable spirits? Nobody knows for sure, but to imagine carving a bird into ivory shows you how much flight mattered. Birds could go where humans could not, soaring above the landscape, seeing everything. That's power worth venerating. Now imagine this in the shaman's hands. One figure is the Lion Man, embodying strength of the predator. Another might be a bird carving, whispering of the sky. Hold them together in firelight, and suddenly you have a mythology. Sky beasts above, earth beasts below, humans caught between. In that in-between space, rituals would be born. It's easy to think of these sky beasts as primitive superstition, but really they're the earliest cousins of constellations. When you see Orion or the Great Bear today, you're repeating the same instinct, projecting animals, hunters, and hybrids onto the night sky. The Aurignacians didn't name Orion, but they may have looked up and told stories of a lion that leapt from the stars, or a bird that carried the sun. The Lion Man in this sense wasn't just about lions, it was part of a cosmology where earth, sky, and imagination all fed into each other. The beast in the ivory held the same weight as the beast in the clouds. Both were symbols, both were real, and both were dangerous if you ignored them. So when you stand here in the cave, gazing into flickering firelight, and glance out toward the vast night sky, you realize the Aurignacians weren't just carving figures for fun. They were anchoring themselves in a universe full of predators, real and imagined, on the ground and in the heavens. And by giving shape to those beasts on walls in ivory, in story, they were building a bridge that kept meaning close even when the lions roared outside and the eagles wheeled above. The cave deepens, narrowing into chambers where light barely survives. You follow the Aurignacians inward, the glow of torches painting orange streaks across limestone walls. The air grows cooler, heavier, damp with the steady drip of mineral water. Here at the threshold between survival and ritual, the Lion Man belongs. These chambers aren't just storage closets for bones, they are ritual centers, places where the ordinary rules of hunting and gathering give way to something larger. Imagine the acoustics first. Even a single word spoken here bounces and folds back on itself, echoes tumbling along the rock. A drumbeat made from stretched hide can rattle the chest, reverberating like thunder. Archaeologists studying caves in the region have tested this. Clap your hands in the right corner, and the sound magnifies, eerie and resonant, as though invisible beings clap back. For people 39,000 years ago, that wasn't just physics, it was the cave itself speaking. Now picture the scene. The Lion Man statue, newly carved, is set in a recess or raised on a rock. Red ochre has been dusted across its surface, staining it with the color of blood and life. Feathers, beads, or carved pendants might hang nearby, offerings to whatever power the figure represents. The firelight makes it loom, its hybrid form larger and more alive in shadow than in ivory. Around it, men and women chant, stamp or hew, letting the echoes carry their voices deeper into the stone. This wasn't worship in the way you might picture temples centuries later. It was more immediate, more experimental. The figurine and the cave together formed a stage for transformation. Perhaps the shaman wore an animal skin, crouched by the Lion Man, mimicking its stance. Perhaps hunters touched the figurine before leaving for the plains, asking for strength in their arms and sharpness in their eyes. The cave was the container, the figurine the focus, and the ritual the glue binding human hope to the unseen. Some archaeologists argue that caves themselves were chosen for these properties. They weren't just convenient shelters, they were chosen because of the way sound carried, the way darkness pressed in, the way mineral shapes resembled beasts or spirits. If you squinted just right, you probably wouldn't survive a night alone in here without panicking. Too many noises, too much unseen movement, but in groups, with ritual, the fear becomes a kind of power. And the caves kept secrets. Unlike open-air art, Carvings and figurines hidden inside remained private, protected from outsiders. That secrecy adds weight. Not everyone saw the Lion Man. Maybe only initiates, hunters or ritual leaders entered these depths. If you stood here with them, you'd feel privileged and unnerved all at once, caught between awe and claustrophobia. When you add it all together, the figurine, the cave, the echoing sound, you realize this wasn't primitive religion, it was the invention of symbolic space. Humans were learning to create places apart from daily life, zones where imagination and reality blended. The cave became both womb and temple, a chamber where humans practiced being something more than themselves. And in that sense, the Lion Man wasn't just art, it was an anchor, a piece of ivory carrying enough weight to transform a cold, damp chamber into the birthplace of myth. Without such focal points, the rituals would have drifted away like smoke. With them, they took root, echoing long after the fire died down. The fire dies lower, the chants soften, and now the real work of keeping the story alive begins. Memory. There is no writing in 39,000 BCE, no cave chalkboard for lesson plans, no parchment records. Knowledge lives in mouths and ears, passed from one breath to another. Around the Lion Man figurine, people begin weaving words into thread, myths, explanations, warnings. These stories are the first software of the human brain, keeping the sculpture from being just an object and making it a doorway into meaning. Picture a circle of hunters, children, and elders gathered in the glow of the hearth. One voice begins, a story of how the lion once walked as a man, or how a man once became a lion to save his people. Another voice adds detail, how the spirits of the sky beasts carried him into dreams, how he returned with claws sharper than flint. Every telling changes slightly, but the core remains. That is the genius of oral tradition. It's flexible enough to survive yet strong enough to stay recognizable across generations. The youngest children are the wide-eyed audience, their minds cataloging the images, lion-headed men, birds with talons like gods, caves echoing with spirit voices. They'll retell these stories in adulthood, changing details but keeping the spine intact. In this way, the Lion Man doesn't just belong to one moment, it becomes eternal, reborn every time the story is spoken. You can imagine the figurine as the silent partner to the tale, the storyteller gestures toward it, the firelight catching its muzzle, the audience leaning in closer. The object and the story reinforce one another. And it isn't only bedtime stories for children. Oral tradition works like a survival manual wrapped in myth. One tale might teach respect for lions, never hunt alone, always carry fire, watch the eyes glowing in the dark. Another tale might stress the need for ritual before hunts. Failure to honor the Lion Man could mean the prey escapes, or the predator finds you instead. The line between myth and practical advice blurs until they're one and the same. Think about your own world. Even today, we tell stories about creatures that never existed, dragons, vampires, superheroes, yet they still carry advice, warnings, or dreams. Don't wander in the woods at night becomes Little Red Riding Hood. Be brave against impossible odds becomes every caped crusader you've ever binge-watched. The Ori nations were already doing the same thing, just without Netflix and comic books. The oral tradition also served another purpose, binding the group together. When a community gathers to hear the same story, they aren't just being entertained, they're rehearsing identity. They're reminding each other, this is who we are, this is what we believe, this is how we survive. You probably won't live long enough in 39,000 BCE to appreciate this, but without those stories, the clan would scatter. Shared myths kept them whole. Now picture a long winter storm, snow piled outside, winds howling through the valley, the people huddle in the cave, passing hours and days. The figurine sits on its stone perch, glowing faintly red with ochre. Stories swell around it, filling the silence, giving courage. Maybe one day, hundreds of kilometers away, another group hears the story and repeats it, carrying the Lion Man into places the ivory figure itself never traveled. That's how myths migrate, not on legs of stone, but on tongues of memory. So the Lion Man is more than ivory. It's a story machine. Every line carved into its body sparks narrative. Every firelit glance invites explanation. Without oral tradition, the figurine would have been forgotten, dust in a cave. With it, the hybrid rode minds and nights for generations, a beast carried not just in hands but in words. Shift your gaze from the Lion Man for a moment, and picture the wider Ice Age gallery of art. Across Europe, other groups of Ori nations are carving, painting, and shaping symbols into being. The Lion Man isn't an isolated miracle, it's part of a broader flowering of creativity that archaeologists call the Aurignacian explosion, and when you line these works up side by side, you start to see patterns, echoes, and contrasts. First, the Venus figurines. Scattered from Willendorf in Austria to Les Bourgues in France, these small statues emphasize female form, broad hips, heavy breasts, round bellies. They are not portraits of individuals but symbols of fertility, survival, and abundance. Where the Lion Man speaks of predator power, the Venus figurines whisper of continuity and life. Together they form a symbolic balance, death and danger on one hand, birth and renewal on the other. Imagine one group of carvers focused on lions, another on mothers, each carving their fears and hopes into the same raw material of ivory. Then there are the painted caves. At Chauvet, some 32,000 years ago, artists drew herds of horses, aurochs, and rhinos in charcoal and ochre. At Lascaux and Altamira, much later, the walls come alive with bison, stags, and bulls. These aren't doodles, they are layered images, carefully chosen and often placed in echoing chambers where sound interacts with light. Some scholars suggest these images were part of rituals too, hunting magic designed to ensure success or to honor the spirits of animals taken. Seen in this light, the Lion Man fits neatly into the same symbolic economy, making visible the forces that govern survival. Portable art adds another layer. At Vogelherd Cave, just kilometers from Hohenstein-Stadel, archaeologists uncovered tiny ivory carvings of mammoths, horses, and lions, small enough to fit in a pocket. Unlike the Lion Man, which was too large and heavy to be casually carried, these figurines could travel. Imagine them as Ice Age charms, small tokens tucked into a pouch, each a reminder of the great beasts that shared the land. Compared to those, the Lion Man feels like a centerpiece, not portable, but monumental, a community focus rather than a personal amulet. And then the music. Bone flutes, carved from griffon vulture wings, and swan bones, have been found in these same Swabian Jura caves. You hold one in your mind, 5-finger holes, carefully placed, still capable of producing notes after 39,000 years. Picture it being played in the same chamber where the Lion Man stood, a haunting, airy melody filling the cave, echoing through darkness, merging with the flicker of firelight on the carved figurine. Art wasn't just visual, it was multisensory, a performance of sight, sound, and belief. When you compare the Lion Man to all these other pieces, its uniqueness sharpens. Fertility figurines represent the continuity of life, painted walls capture the power of herds, flutes express sound made into order, but only the Lion Man takes the leap into the unseen, the invented hybrid. It represents not just what people observed, but what they imagined. That's why archaeologists argue it marks the dawn of true symbolic thought, a move from reproducing nature to inventing beings beyond nature. In this way, the Lion Man belongs to a constellation of Ice Age art that stretches across the continent. Each object is a fragment of human imagination, chipped and shaped by hands long vanished. Together they show that 39,000 years ago, humans were not just surviving, they were thinking, dreaming, storytelling. They were making meaning out of bone and stone, turning the harsh Ice Age landscape into a theater of symbols. So when you hold the Lion Man in your thoughts, don't isolate it as a freak curiosity. Place it among the Venices, the painted bison, the pocket mammoths, the bird-bone flutes. It is one voice in a chorus, one ivory figure in a world suddenly bursting with imagination. And yet it stands out for the same reason it stood out to those who carved it. It dares to cross the line between what is and what could be. The Lion Man sits in silence, but you can almost sense the presence of someone stepping forward, a figure not just another hunter or gatherer but someone set apart, the shaman. Every known hunter-gatherer society has some version of this role, the person who mediates between the everyday world and the unseen, the one who knows how to read omens, craft rituals and speak with spirits. And in Ice Age Europe, the Lion Man statue almost certainly lived in the hands or at least in the rituals of such specialists. Picture the scene: a group of hunters preparing for a dangerous lion or bison hunt. Before dawn they gather in the cave chamber. The shaman steps forward, cloak of animal skins pulled around his shoulders. Maybe he wears the skull of a lion or antlers strapped to his head, transforming his silhouette in the firelight. His body is painted with ochre stripes or charcoal smears, the patterns echoing the animals they hope to encounter. In his hands he cradles the Lion Man figurine, the carved fusion of predator and human. The group falls quiet. The shaman's job isn't to swing a spear, it's to anchor the hunt in meaning. He chants, moves, breathes as though the lion's spirit flows through him. He touches the figurine to each hunter's chest, whispering blessings of strength, speed and courage. He may even act out the predator's movements, crouching low, leaping forward, mimicking claws, slashing the air. This is not mere play acting. In his mind, and in the minds of the watchers, he has become the lion, and the hunters borrow its power by proximity. Across cultures and eras, shamans are the shapeshifters, the ones who blur lines between human and animal. Later, in Siberia, shamans would wear cloaks lined with feathers, believing they transformed into birds during trance. In North America, they would become wolves, bears, eagles in vision quests. The lion man is the same archetype, frozen in ivory. It may have been a literal tool for trance, something the shaman held while drumming, singing or fasting to enter altered states of consciousness. In the glow of fire, shadows flaring on the walls, the figurine could seem to move, to come alive, to guide the shaman across the boundary between the physical and the spirit world. What's striking is the risk built into this role. To be a shaman was to walk dangerously close to madness. You probably wouldn't survive the initiation hours, in darkness, hunger, pain, isolation, designed to break the barrier of ordinary perception. Those who did return claimed knowledge of spirits, visions of beasts, instructions from ancestors. The Lion Man was the proof, the artifact, the sacred tool anchoring those invisible journeys. The shaman also mediated community crises, famine, illness, storms. When crops failed or herds vanished, the community turned not just to spears but to ritual. Why has the lion taken too many? Why has the sky beast stolen the sun? The shaman answered with ceremonies, stories, and symbols, often centered on figures like the Lion Man. He became the translator between fear and hope. Even today, when you stand in front of the figurine in a museum, you can feel that weight. It's not just art, it's a relic of a role. Someone once held this figure in hands, trembling with responsibility, believing they alone could keep the bond between people and the powers that ruled the Ice Age. So while hunters stalked prey, and mothers nursed infants, the shaman worked with imagination itself, making the unseen visible, making the hybrid real, making survival meaningful. And in the Lion Man, you glimpse that ancient mediator staring back, the first shaman's tool, still potent, 39,000 years later. Now imagine stepping back from the ritual, back from the shaman's chants and the glow of fire on ivory. Out in the wider world of 39,000 BCE, life is brutally simple. You eat or you starve, you stay warm or you freeze, you defend your people or you lose them. And yet, the Lion Man shows how even in that harsh equation, belief was woven into survival. It wasn't art for art's sake, it was art braided tightly with the needs of daily life. Start with hunting. The figurine may have served as a kind of hunting magic. Before a group set out, they could touch the ivory lion, whisper a vow, or leave an offering. The idea wasn't abstract, it was practical. If you thought the lion spirit walked with you, maybe you gripped your spear tighter, stalked prey with more focus, trusted your group with more courage. That mental edge could mean the difference between a successful kill and returning empty-handed to a hungry camp. You can laugh at the superstition, but ask any modern athlete about their lucky socks or ritual handshakes. Humans are wired to weave belief into performance. Now add fertility. The Venus figurines scattered across Europe tell us how deeply survival hinged on the cycles of life. Without children, the clan vanishes. Without mothers, no children survive. The Lion Man may not shout fertility as loudly as the rounded Venuses, but think of his upright, commanding form. He could have been a counterpart, a figure invoked for male strength, for the courage of hunters, for the protective ferocity of a lion guarding cubs. Together, fertility and ferocity stitched the social fabric tight. Weather too played its part. In an Ice Age climate where glaciers clawed across the continent, seasons could swing from abundance to catastrophe. Storms, bitter winds, sudden thaws, none were predictable. People may have turned to the Lion Man and other figurines to make sense of it. If the sky beasts howled, perhaps they needed to be appeased. If the prey vanished, perhaps the lion spirit was offended. Belief offered explanation when survival left only fear. And this blending of survival and belief had another hidden function: community cohesion. The rituals around the Lion Man weren't private hobbies, they were group acts, binding hunters, children, elders, and mothers into a shared rhythm of meaning. If everyone believed the hunt depended on the figurine's blessing, then everyone committed to the ritual. That unity in turn made the group stronger in the field, more cooperative in the chase, more disciplined in the face of risk. Belief was survival, not distraction. Even the carving itself fits this logic. The hundreds of hours poured into shaping mammoth ivory weren't wasted. They were investments, time spent binding the group to a shared symbol, reinforcing the invisible threads of trust and identity. You can picture the carver at work, others gathered around, murmuring stories of lions and sky beasts. The figurine slowly emerging wasn't just art, it was the material proof of imagination working in service of survival. So when you stand in that cave, hearing the echoes of flutes and chants, looking at the hybrid lion man, you're not peering into some detached artistic flourish, you're looking at the fusion point of everything that kept those people alive, the hunger in their bellies, the babies in their arms, the storms outside the cave, the predators in the dark, all of it distilled into one figure that said, we are more than fragile flesh, we are bound with beasts, with sky, with spirit. Together we endure. The story of the Lion Man doesn't stop in prehistory. Fast forward to 1939, and the quiet valley of Lohn in southern Germany. Archaeologists are poking around Hohlenstein-Stadil cave, clearing layers of Ice Age sediment. They're expecting animal bones, maybe stone tools, useful but ordinary finds. What they uncover instead is stranger, hundreds of small ivory fragments, broken, scattered, coated with 39,000 years of cave dust. At first they don't know what they're looking at, a shard of mammoth ivory here, a sliver shaped like a leg there. The fragments are carefully packed away and carried back for study. Imagine opening a crate and seeing tiny splinters of ivory, so fragile they look like chalk. No single piece gives the secret away. A claw-like curve could be animal, a flat panel could be tool waste, but slowly, as they line up the pieces, a form begins to suggest itself. There's something about the angle of one fragment, the curve of another, it hints at a figure. And then history interferes. World War II breaks out, Germany plunges into chaos. The fragments are boxed, stored and nearly forgotten while bombs fall and cities burn. For decades the pieces wait in silence, a puzzle unsolved, as human history writes a far bloodier chapter above them. You can almost picture the Lion Man sighing in ivory limbo, waiting for someone to remember. It isn't until the 1960s that serious reconstruction work resumes. Archaeologists reopen the boxes, brush away the dust, and begin the painstaking task of refitting fragments. It's like trying to rebuild a shattered vase without the picture on the box, except the vase is carved from 31,000-year-old ivory, brittle as eggshell. Each piece has to be cleaned, compared, fitted, and glued. A wrong placement could ruin months of work. At first the reconstruction is partial, a torso here, a head there. It looks odd, almost too strange to be real. Is it a man? An animal, a distorted carving? Some scholars doubt it could even be intentional, but as more fragments surface in later digs, the picture becomes undeniable. By the 1980s the figure is recognizable, upright body, lion's head, a hybrid, a sculpture like nothing else of its age. And then comes the realization, this isn't just art, it's the oldest known figurative sculpture in the world. Older than the pyramids, older than Stonehenge, older even than the painted caves of Lascaux. While most of human culture was still focused on tools and survival, someone 39,000 years ago was carving imagination itself into ivory. The discovery sends ripples through archaeology. Suddenly, questions multiply. Who carved it? Why hybridize lion and man? Was it shamanic, mythic, purely symbolic? The fragments don't answer, but their very existence forces us to rethink what humans were capable of at the dawn of Europe's settlement. These weren't primitive cave people. These were humans already dreaming beyond the visible, already shaping belief into objects. So the excavation of 1939 doesn't just uncover ivory, it uncovers the oldest surviving evidence of imagination made solid, and the irony is thick. At the very moment modern humanity was about to plunge into war, the deep past whispered through broken fragments about creativity, spirit, and connection. The story of the Lion Man didn't end with its excavation in 1939. Once the fragments were in scholarly hands, the real work began, piecing together a shattered Ice Age masterpiece. Imagine sitting at a long table covered in trays, each holding delicate ivory splinters, more than 300 of them. Some are the size of your finger, others smaller than a coin. They are brittle, yellowed, and cracked from age. Each one could fit into the sculpture in dozens of possible ways, and there's no instruction manual. The first attempts at reconstruction in the 1960s and 1970s gave the figure a rough, incomplete shape. Scholars glued together what they could, but whole sections were missing. The head looked distorted, the posture uncertain. Some researchers even doubted whether it was a hybrid at all. Was it just a damaged human figurine, a badly preserved animal, Without enough pieces, interpretation hung in suspense. Over time, further excavations of Hohenstein Stadel yielded more fragments. Archaeologists returned to the cave, carefully sieving soil, combing through sediments, and discovering shards overlooked in earlier digs. By the late 1980s, dozens of additional pieces had been recovered. Slowly, painstakingly, the Lion Man grew clearer. Each new fragment slotted into the puzzle, locking others into place, refining the proportions of arms, legs, torso, and head. Then, in 2012, a major restoration effort began. Modern techniques, microscopes, digital scans, adhesives stronger and more precise than earlier glues, allowed conservators to attempt a near-complete reconstruction. For months, specialists hunched over the fragments, mapping edges, aligning grooves, testing fits. They weren't just handling ivory, they were holding the fingerprints of someone who lived nearly 40,000 years earlier. Each join was an act of both science and reverence. By 2013, the Lion Man stood again at 31 centimeters tall, upright, unmistakable. The legs were human, the torso human, but the head was lion. Elongated muzzle, pointed ears, commanding profile. The surface bore carved lines suggesting musculature, perhaps even fur texture. What had once been a box of splinters now revealed itself as a complete figure, a being straddling species and worlds. Seeing it whole for the first time was a shock, even to seasoned archaeologists. It wasn't just that the figurine was old, it was that it was ambitious. No other object from that time period attempted such a leap into the imaginary. Venus figurines represented fertility, animal carvings represented prey, but this was something new entirely. It suggested that humans 39,000 years ago weren't just copying the world, they were inventing. Today, the Lion Man is displayed in the Ulm Museum in Germany, restored to near wholeness. Visitors step up to the glass case and stare at it much as you do now, feeling both awe and confusion. The seams of restoration are faintly visible, reminders that the figure is both ancient and modern, a collaboration across millennia between Ice Age carvers and 21st century conservators. And perhaps the most haunting detail, there are still fragments left over. Not every piece has been fitted. The figure may never be 100% complete. That lingering incompleteness feels appropriate. The Lion Man resists finality, as if reminding us that imagination itself can never be fully assembled. What matters is the act of piecing it together, again and again across time. Now that the Lion Man stands reconstructed in its glass case, the debates begin. Scholars, artists and visitors all ask the same questions. What exactly does this figure mean? The answers vary wildly, and each interpretation reflects the concerns of those doing the asking. Some argue it was a mythic being, a character from Ice Age stories long since lost. In this view, the Lion Man was part of a pantheon, spirits of sky, earth and predator, each with their own role. Perhaps he was a guardian of hunters, a judge of bravery, or even a godlike figure to whom offerings were made. The solemn face and upright posture support the idea of reverence. Others push toward magic. They suggest the figurine was used in rituals, carried into ceremonies, invoked for protection or success. Maybe it was the shaman's tool for transformation as we imagined earlier. Its hybrid form makes sense here, not an ordinary animal, not an ordinary human, but something that crossed boundaries. In many cultures, crossing boundaries is the essence of spiritual power. Then there are those who see imagination for imagination's sake. Maybe the carver was experimenting, pushing beyond the limits of copying reality. What if a man had the head of a lion? That question alone shows abstract thought. It doesn't require religion or magic, only curiosity and the desire to create. If true, the Lion Man might be the earliest surviving what-if sculpture in human history. Another camp interprets it through the lens of social bonding. The figurine may have been less about spirits and more about identity. A community that gathered around this hybrid could see themselves reflected in it, strong, enduring, not merely prey but kin to predators. The figurine wasn't divine, it was communal propaganda, a reminder that humans belong among the great beasts. Of course, modern perspectives color these debates. Some researchers compare it to later mythologies, Egyptian gods like Sekhmet, lion-headed goddess of war, or Mesopotamian Lamassu, winged lion guardians. They see the Lion Man as a distant ancestor of hybrid deities, proof that the instinct to merge species and spirits is deeply human. Others warn against imposing too much. Maybe it wasn't a god or a myth, but simply a story, a visual aid to accompany a tale told on long winter nights. And then there's the simple awe factor. Standing in front of it, you feel something you can't quite articulate, a sense of presence, as though the figure carries its own authority. Even stripped of context, it radiates power. Visitors lean in, whispering without meaning to, as if afraid to disturb it. That silent command is itself part of the interpretation. Whatever it was meant to be, it worked. The debates will never end, and maybe that's the point. The Lion Man resists being pinned down because it embodies the very essence of human imagination, open-ended, interpretive, flexible. It invites us to wonder, to argue, to project. In that way it continues to function exactly as it did 39,000 years ago, as a canvas for meaning, shaped by whoever gazes upon it. So when archaeologists squabble in journals or visitors press their noses to the glass, they are all participating in the same ritual. The Aurignacians began, looking at this hybrid, and asking, what is it? The answer is always different, and always telling, not just about the Lion Man, but about us. The Lion Man stands now in the Ulm Museum, silent behind glass, but its legacy stretches far beyond southern Germany. This one figure born from mammoth ivory and human imagination, nearly 39,000 years ago, reshaped how we see ourselves as a species. It proves that by the time Homo sapiens set foot in Ice Age Europe, they were already capable of more than survival. They could imagine, symbolize, merge worlds and carve that vision into something lasting. Think of what this means. The Lion Man is the oldest known figurative sculpture on Earth. Not a tool, not a spearhead, not a scrap of hide, but a piece of imagination made solid. It tells us that our ancestors were already storytellers, already mythmakers, already living in a symbolic universe. When you stand before it today, you're not just looking at ivory, you're staring straight into the birth of culture. Its influence echoes into the future. The hybrid figure anticipates every mythic creature that would follow: Egyptian gods with falcon heads, Mesopotamian lion guardians, Hindu Narasimha, medieval griffins, even the superheroes of today. The Lion Man is their ancestor, proof that blending human with beast has always been a way of grappling with our fears and dreams. Every time you watch a movie about werewolves or lion kings, you're walking the same imaginative trail blazed in that Swabian cave. It also changes how we define humanity. For decades, archaeologists debated what separated us from other hominins, like Neanderthals. Was it tool use, fire, language? The Lion Man suggests it was imagination, the ability to conceive of something that never existed, and then make it real. That capacity, more than anything else, is what carried Homo sapiens forward. Without it, no religions, no nations, no art, no Netflix, just meat and fire. With it you get Lion Man, and everything that came after. Today, schoolchildren press their faces against the museum glass. Scholars sketch it, scan it, debate it. Artists reinterpret it. Spiritual seekers see in it the echo of their own practices, and in each case the figurine still works. It still sparks meaning, still provokes awe, still reminds us of the thin line between beast and human. Its survival is itself miraculous. It could have been smashed, burned, lost to time, but it endured, hidden in a cave, scattered in fragments, then painstakingly reassembled across decades. Now it endures again, not just as ivory, but as symbol, a reminder that 39,000 years ago, humans stood in a cave, carved a dream into being, and in doing so announced to the universe, we imagine, therefore we are. And tonight as you close your eyes you can almost hear the echoes, the scrape of flint on ivory, the murmur of stories in firelight, the watchful gaze of the Lion Man rising from the shadows. So now, let the echoes fade, the cave grows quiet, the torchlight dwindles